somehow we started experiencing it with China. So, and this started already in January for us. So in January, we heard from our employees that we have to take some early measures, etc. So they alerted us, and in February we sort of introduced all these safety measures, work from home measures, and also um somehow how do we manage the operations and deliver despite all these challenges. We started thinking about that, and a China team in some way was the lead, or had the lead, and then that helped a little bit when the whole thing got expanded worldwide. So from February, starting with China, and then when it struck other parts of the world, and starting from I think somewhere around mid-March, we sort of enforced very strict safety measures, work from home measures, and other measures in order to keep our employees safe. But fortunately, somehow we continued with our order fulfillment activities all through this time, mainly because we were able to do these safety measures, and somehow in our setup that works. And in addition, also our employees were very, let's say, very engaging in that sense. So they were also willing to cooperate and willing to work, taking all these precautions, of course. So overall, our operations sort of continued. And now I think since probably 2 to 3 weeks, we are returning to some degree of normalcy. It is still not perfect yet, and still there are some concerns here and there. For example, the US, we have a renewed explosion of cases, so we have to take care of that. And in Israel, we hear some stories also. So overall, there is some concern, but still, I would say compared to the mid-March period, we are in some degree of normalcy. A good question. So, we have to say that somewhere between February to almost mid-May, customer activities were very, very less, almost down to zero in some countries. And okay, China still had some set of activities going on, but generally speaking, very weak. So most of the time that we spent was in trying to train, educate ourselves and our people and our partners somehow with several training programs or learning programs. We also conducted, of course, some programs for customers and let's say also our market network. So many of our agents, they were also somehow at home. So we thought, how can we utilize their time? So we conducted a lot of training programs, workshops, a lot of, let's say, experience exchange sessions, because normally you don't find time for discussing a strategy or how the world is going to evolve, or how is it in their neighborhood, etc. So this was good also from that point of view. I went into contact with many of our colleagues during this time that I could never do in the last, let's say, 2-3 years. So the time was mostly spent in trying to train, re-educate, learn, sort of exchange experiences, and also trying to reflect a little bit with all our people who are very, very close to the market. This was, let's say, mostly the case. And now, since a few weeks, we have customer activity sort of restarting. So people have started to travel in China, to an extent in Turkey. India is still on some sort of remote support. Not much happening yet, but still remote support activities is going on. US is also mostly with remote support. So activities have resumed, but still not back to where it was. Currently, the situation is slightly better, I would say. I mean, just as you were saying before, we see some or see a lot of activities going on in the non-woven segment, that segment of the business. That is not so bad. But in the traditional textile market, especially from in the fiber to yarn segment, we have activities now starting in China and Turkey to an extent. The other market is still very dominant. There's not much happening. And in the fabric area, we see some activities also in Europe, sort of resuming. So it's been a slow start after let's say 3 or 4 month disruption. We hope sort of this continues and becomes more and more normal. First of all, we have to acknowledge that all of us are somehow in the same boat. So we are swimming together, and somehow every situation is unique. So every company has some sort of unique customers, markets, financial position, market position. So everybody has sort of a unique take on how to get over this. So it's not very helpful to actually give advice or give inputs in a let's say in a very generic way. But I would say that there are probably two main points. One is the disruption, the trade disruption, the market disruption that has been caused. This will cause a big hit in business, short term and midterm. So the first point is somehow how do we balance the short term versus the medium long term? So on one side you have to survive, tide through the crisis, but on the other side you do not want to damage many let's say elements of your future or long-term strength. So this is a very, very difficult balance to achieve. And here I think it's not only a financial question, but it's also a leadership question somehow, and also a human question. So this is one part, and I think this is pretty much common for most companies, textiles or non-textiles, doesn't matter where it is, but especially in textiles, this is going to be very difficult, especially because of the labor disruption as well. So one thing is the balance between the short term, mid-term, long term, and how do you do that in a good way. This I would say is one of the common elements. The other one is really, as we were discussing before, this is a time to somehow reflect and see how do we want to adapt to a post-corona world somehow. So things are not going to be the same as it was in the past. So how do we, what do we touch? What do we change? So for example, products, do we make the same products? Are the markets that we had the same in terms of relevance for the future? Is a business model going to be the same today and tomorrow? How is our operations changing, in a post-corona situation? How do we actually somehow work with our partners who are, at one place before and now are in a completely different place? So there is a whole deal of reflection that needs to be done on many elements of the business model, strategy, products, also people and operations. And this is a good time for it. And that's something also we are trying to do. We are trying to take a lot of inputs from our customers, from our people, listening to a lot of wise voices to also learn a little bit and see what we have to adapt. And I think these two are in a way common for all, including the textile industry. The solutions may be different in each one's case because the situation is unique, but broadly speaking, those two are areas that I would consider looking at. that's a very good question. So, it reminded me of one of the questions. I think maybe you've also participated once, but we do these Uster Quality University programs for owners and let's say senior executives. And one of the questions that we pose to the participants is like, is quality and productivity linked, for example? Is quality and energy linked? Is quality and margins linked? Is quality and reputation linked? Is quality and waste sort of linked? Is quality and operations linked? So typically people tend to have a very unidimensional view of quality, that it is one among, let's say, the production cost quality trio, and you have to manage that just as you manage the other two. But the reality is somehow quality is highly tied to all those aspects, be it productivity, be it waste, be it efficiency, be it profitability and reputation. So in that sense, now is a time where we can actually relate quality towards, let's say, the cost angle, profitability and consistency angle much more than what we did in the past. So at least in the, I mean, some of the questions that we are getting now and the kind of support that we are providing now is quite a bit in the optimization topic. So how can, for example, using Uster equipment, how can one optimize raw material purchase, raw material utilization, raw material yield, let's say? The same with also production. How can we actually achieve, let's say, a better balance of productivity and quality by having some of this quality information tied together with the production information? So quite a few of, let's say, the questions, advice, requests that is coming through from customers, and also what we are responding is in this area. So I think somehow with the, especially on the fiber products and also the digital products, we see them to be very strongly relevant at the moment to somehow save costs and also be some sustainably successful, like making consistent quality despite all the restrictions that you have. So we have a lot to offer in that space, and one of our newest areas is really this non-woven business. This is also a new field for us now since I think 2 years, and this has been also an interesting time for that industry. So the production capacity is ramping up like really high, especially in some markets like China. And so in that market also, or in that market segment, we have questions around contamination and how do we actually make sure that the final product, because these are used for medical applications, so how can we ensure that they are contamination free, and how do we ensure that they are defect free somehow, also because of regulatory issues. This has been another area where we find suddenly some traction during these times. So overall, the focus of our customers has changed, but we somehow have been able to somehow be relevant and offer solutions that help both in the traditional spinning segment, but also now in the new non-woven and fabric inspection segment. What we also see is this digital solutions sort of getting a lot of more traction. So I'm sure you've heard of this cliche that Corona has accelerated stuff by many years. What we always wanted to have, but would have taken probably 5-10 years to achieve. And this has also been another positive part. So we have accelerated some of those topics, and we also find that this is benefiting some of our customers. So overall, rather big learning, unexpected though, but nevertheless, what is good is that we are still somehow be able to stand beside customers and help them. And our products or solutions still seem to be quite relevant in this time. We were just we are lucky in that sense. So the EVS part, especially, they had a non-woven product in the portfolio. We integrated. We have improved it substantially in the last 1 year, and now this is helping a little bit in this time. We also had the Vision Shield, the Yossi Vision Shield, which is mainly for staple spinning, but we had, let's say, not a very strong presence in the non-woven segment, but now also that has got some traction. So the one product that we had already in the portfolio, but the new one that we took over from EVS, both are somehow combining for us to have a decent effect on the market. So we are still starting to feel what would be the long-term changes in the operations of our customers due to Corona disruption. However, some things are becoming more clear. So, for example, the trend of automation, which sort of took off, let's say, in the last 3 to 5 years, step by step, let's say, not to the same degree in all markets, but this is accelerated. So in many ways, actually, you could also say that Corona is accelerating what was already happening, but probably not in a strong way. So Corona is accelerating this trend of somehow automation intelligence on one side. Corona is also accelerating the focus on value chain and supply chain topics. So we are also thinking of what we have to do in both those areas. So certainly some of these automation topics will get more traction, let's say, from an innovation point of view. And we're also looking at how this value chain, supply chain topics will evolve, and what do we have to do there. So sustainability has become a big topic as well in the recent. I mean, especially it was big, but post Corona probably becomes even stronger. So we are putting our heads around that topic and see how we can contribute in that area. So there are changes, and we have begun to start sort of pushing forward some initiatives. On other initiatives, we are trying to understand what will happen and see what we have to do. But in many ways, this is an acceleration of what was already happening before. I think one can never prepare for a crisis like this. So we all do some sort of risk management, risk planning, but this has been nothing like what remotely close to what you would have planned in one of those scenarios. So on one side, yes, there are a lot of lessons learned, but for me personally, one of the things that I'm really concerned about, worried about, is the displacement of thousands of people from their jobs, and especially from the textile industry, with limited access to support, food, money, livelihood, living in very tough conditions. It has prompted me to actually to really look into the mirror and see what can I do somehow. And this has also been one positive thing. You know, in our busy life, we don't think about all these things. But now I'm personally very worried about that, and so I've been trying to through my contacts and networks see how we can help in our own small way. I don't think that we as individuals can dramatically change everything, but in our own way, how can we contribute to the communities, and especially those who are really suffering in tough conditions. So for me, this is one important change. Let's say it has softened, let's say, the only business focus with a business and a very balanced, let's say, approach to also business, to also take a society and community focus. So this is one. The other point I think is something that I mentioned before. You know, we have to manage this challenge or achieve this balance of short term and long term. We need to carry our people along because somehow we are all in this together. We need to at the same time have this sense of optimism for the future and keep ourselves sort of energized and engaged to bring about change also for the good for the future. So in terms of lessons learned, I have a lot of learning from also from my personal leadership front. What do I do? How do I do some of this stuff to carry people along? And also, how do I play a part in the whole company so that we can all sort of be optimistic and positive and think about the long term and engage for the long term. So also on the leadership front, it has been quite a journey, let's say. Overall, I would say that, you know, it has had an effect that I probably would not have had in the normal course of life. So in a way, I'm thankful that the moment has come, the time has come to also look at other things besides just business. But it also is, there's a lot of a sense of responsibility on all of us to contribute in our own way and make a difference, especially to the livelihood of the people who have been displaced from their jobs. So yeah, learning on one side, responsibility on the other side. So pre-COVID is a rather high ambition. So one of the things that we feel is, despite all the noise around, so you see the stock market going up, you see a lot of hype around recovery and all that. If you cut through all this noise, we believe that first there has to be a medical solution before there is a sustainable recovery phase. So if you look at all the let's say rather optimistic estimates, this can happen towards the end of the year, maybe beginning of next year. Some say more towards mid of next year. So in a way, when that happens, when there is a medical solution, both either by way of vaccine or by way of therapy, that's when some sort of recovery can start. I mean, I'm not discounting any short-term bump because of pent-up demand or whatever. This might also happen even this year potentially, but I'm talking more about some sort of sustainable recovery. So sustainable recovery, I think, can only begin after we have some sort of medical solution for this. And we have to be a little bit realistic about what is this recovery going to look like. So we have had a disruption in consumer consumption. And besides that, a big economic damage that has been caused sort of across the world. So there is no one country that can sort of compensate for the demand because its market is booming, as we had, for example, in 2008, 2009. Some countries took off and others benefited from because of globalization. But now we've been sort of hit across the board, so we should not discount that this damage is deeper and it's harder to get out. So realistically speaking, this recovery is going to be a bit slow and probably takes, at the very least, a couple of years. And it is also reasonable to assume that it is not going back to, let's say, 2018 levels or early 2019 levels, if you think that as a normal. So most probably we have a different normal post-corona. I really don't know at what level it will be, but I'm pretty convinced that this is going to be not at the same level as it existed before, at least in the initial period. Despite that, you know, the textile business has also it's a very seasoned business, you know, so it has gone through many ups and downs. It has adapted, it has moved despite many of these challenges over several years, decades. And so I personally, even in my life, I've seen at least three big hits to the textile industry. It has to come back. But now in the recent past, you've also seen textiles evolution into also high-tech innovation areas. So, for example, technical textiles, this is a new area of growth for the textile industry and an area to contribute and accelerate maybe. So both from the experience from the past and also the needs of the future, textiles will stay and probably adapt and grow. We have to adapt, but it will adapt and grow. So in that sense, we are also very optimistic about the prospects in the textile industry. So overall, recovery will happen, possibly after a medical solution is in place. Little bit more realistic recovery expectation rather than what you would expect from all the hype around you. But for sure, there's a recovery and a positive trend that you can expect in the future for the industry. So thank you for the opportunity to connect, Gopal. I think as we discussed before, this is something that has brought all of us together. So in that sense, we are united in many ways. So I wish you, your family, also, let's say the family from the business side, and all the friends and colleagues in the industry and in the Indian market, to stay strong, be optimistic, be positive, look up to a new world. And actually, I believe that India has this strong innate ability of being resilient and being highly adaptive. This is a very deep, I think, characteristic of most of us. And we probably need to look inward also in that sense and count on our strengths to be inspired and stay positive for the future, but also really think about how we can support people around our community, around our society around, so that, you know, we somehow don't cause a deeper crack than just the pandemic crack, and we can somehow stay together as a society. So I wish you all the best. And on behalf of Uster, the Uster family, we wish and support anything that you would like to do on that part, and wish you wish all of you to stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you.